Welcome to the Julie Laughton Living Podcast, the place to get advice, tips, and tricks to building the life and luxury home of your dreams with 30-year business owner, designer, and builder, Julie Laughton. It all starts with a good plan. This is Julie Laughton Living.
Welcome back to another episode of Julie Laughton Podcast. Thank you for coming back and listening. Today I'm going to talk about room additions and how and why they add value to your home. So before we get started, don't forget to check out my website now or later and check out my 7 simple steps, because it's like a whole instruction manual of what's going to happen, and it guides you through the entire process so you're ready for your remodel or your custom home before you get started. So anyway, remodels and custom homes all have the same process, but there's a million different ways to do things, and all of them affect you in different ways, including your sanity and your amount of money spent. So if you have a home you love and you just don't want to move, the no-brainer is, hey, let's just add on to it and make it better and give it a total refresh. What's funny about remodels, because this is what I do 99% of the time, is that because the home is personal and you know it. And that's one huge thing. And the other thing is, God forbid you live there. That would be, these days, I just can't imagine people doing that, but they do. And the thing is, this remodel of adding to your home, it's such a beautiful thing, because you take your existing home where you love and you live and you love your neighborhood, then you simply add on to the back or put a second story on, and then you have a brand new home. Basically, because once you do that, of course, you're going to gut the interior, which means not, maybe move some walls, but you're going to really refresh the inside and the outside. And it's like having a whole new wardrobe. You're completely refreshed. You get rid of all the old stuff and you only bring in the new stuff. So you purge and cleanse, and the house is literally brand new without the expense of tearing it down, building ground up, and moving to another location. With that could be a 3 to 5 year process, where your remodel could be 18 months. So you're in for less time. They're all stressful, but the more stress, funny enough, is when you do your own home that you love, because you're emotionally attached to it. So it's a whole thing, but I could go on and on about the psychology of this business and how it affects you and your pets and the whole thing. But adding onto your home adds value, and you get a brand new home. It's like buying a brand new car almost. It's like, or a brand new, really, it's like having a whole new wardrobe. So anyway, I highly recommend adding to what you have, because it adds value, and then you actually make more money in the long run on your investment. My favorite remodel, because it's my favorite client, is Tony Baxter, because the house he built ground up years ago. I think it's 35 years ago now. He works for Disney. Tony Baxter is the legend of Disney, and the house is an English Tudor estate. And the craftsmanship inside and outside is magical, storybook themed, like over the top. So our job 30 years later, which is, about 5 years ago, was to add on to the back of this masterpiece storybook Tudor estate without it looking new. And so even though the addition was rather small, we literally bumped out one room 5 feet and the other room similar, but the fact of how we had to tie in all the hand-hewn wire brush wood had to match. All the original stucco with a special finish on it, a special troweled finish, had to match. And that was just outside. And then every piece of glass was stained glass. We had to do a vintage stained glass. Of course, Tony is part of all this stained glass design. And then inside, we had to match Venetian plasters and stuccos from 30 years ago. The paint's faded and this and that. I wouldn't say faded, but I'd say aged. And then custom carpets and custom cabinets, and everything had to go with the original theme and the hand hewing. And because we do better work than Disney craftsmen, or just as good. We're good on our custom. We've basically never left Tony's house, and we're still working on things today. So we're doing new garage doors this week. I should say this month, and a custom fountain for him that he's been waiting for 30 years. So we finally get it finished, and it'll be finished next week, and it's on my Instagram. So, but the point is, those kind of remodels, I mean, talk about passion for your home and having a custom style. You have to continue. I mean, we didn't reinvent anything. We just, the challenge of doing that and duplicating it 30 years later was huge. So that was a fun one. You can see it on my website. So the other thing about when you do a remodel, because, you know, who knows, did you buy your house? Was it a tract home, or, you know, was it a vintage cottage? What happens is when you go to remodel, we try to, you know, reinvent or do things that increase everything, the volume, the space. You know, of course, I add new doors and windows and decks and patios and outdoor living. But one of the biggest things I do that's similar to me taking the wall out and adding on an extended yard is I vault the ceilings. Because it's funny, because all these homes were built back in the the 20s and 30s, depending on which ones, but even in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they all have drop ceilings, and there's vaulted attic space up there that you could use to really wow the you know, do a wow factor when you walk in the door, or just vault everything, you know, and it changes the volume and the feeling in your home and doubles the size of your space when you vault the ceiling. So if you have a chance to remodel and vault a ceiling and then kick it up by adding some wood paneling up there, which means T&G, you know, tongue and groove, and beams. Oh my God, that changes it dramatically. And it's not inexpensive, but it's worth every penny for the final look. So when you add on to your home, you know, I guess the biggest thing is, can I afford it? Is it worth it? You know, because most people are desperate to have more space because their family's changing and they bought the home they love, or maybe they're in the neighborhood they love, but the adding on, you know, the biggest challenge, again, it goes back to how long have you lived there, and are you going to live through the remodel? Because all that stress that comes with tearing your house apart and tearing the back of the house off and adding on, it's really just, you got to be financially able and committed and have the money set aside. Of course, that's rule number one. And then number two is just managing the stress of, you know, us tearing your house apart. Because when you start with a plan and you go through the 7 simple steps, you don't do anything until everything's organized and on paper up front. So there should be no mystery and no drama, because if everything's organized and you organize yourself and your team is organized and no one forgets to tell you something, or no one, you know, if you're not paying attention, that's your fault. But your point is, you got to just be organized. So everything happens before the work starts. You should be golden. So the stress is just the fact of, oh my gosh, they're tearing my house apart. I see that as the biggest stress, but you know, if you work with a good team, you're golden. Okay. So construction costs, I could go on all day and give you parameters, because all the things, you know, the construction cost. So if you're not going to build something and you're just going to go in your house and refresh and paint and change some cabinets, it's like $250 a square foot to $350. I'm talking about cosmetic. No moving walls, no moving windows, no moving rooms. Just take the cabinets out, put them back, countertops, floors, paint. You're in that $250 to $350 range. Now, when you do room additions, and the construction cost is not what it used to be, you're talking $650 a foot to add a room on, because you have foundation. If you didn't have foundation, then the cost is lower. But and then if it's a really complicated hillside, you're $850. If you're on the side of a hill, let's say you're on the side of a hill and you want to put a room on under your house or on the back of the house, you got caisson. So now your cost goes up to $1,200 a square foot. So the construction cost of the building is maybe $450, but the foundation makes it $650 to who knows what, $1,200, $1,500, you know, because it's the foundation. So the construction cost, you know, is the framing and the what goes inside, but your foundation is what makes it the number to build an addition, which is the same price to build a custom home. So, you know, you have to think about that. it's because when you remodel the inside, that's one thing because the building's already there. But when you add a new building and the footing, then the cost is set price of $650 to $850 minimum. Depends on where you live, depends on the style of the building. Now we build on the coast, and we use really high quality materials with finishes that are, finished. So we don't build stucco boxes, and there's a huge difference to the quality of coastal living to just maybe another location where there's no aesthetic needed, like Hemet. Just kidding. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. So yeah. So room additions is probably the best thing you can do because you get to stay in your neighborhood, you keep your home you love, and they add a ton of value because every square foot you add pays you back at the end of the day as the years go by. So don't forget, think about remodeling. And if you have any other questions, check out my website, check out the 7 simple steps. Make sure you're ready for your remodel. And again, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Julie Laughton Living. For more information or to connect with Julie one-on-one, visit julielaughtonliving.com. And don't forget, it all starts with a good plan.